Hi guys. So first off, when we're talking shotguns, let's talk about the real strengths of them. And this is why this will not be a short video. So I'm warning you now. First off, the reason why a shotgun is a great weapon, and in my mind why it's superior for home defense, is versatility. With a shotgun, I can run birdshot, which is a very small, basically a bunch of very small pellets. I can run buckshot, which is a collection of larger pellets, or I can use slugs. Okay, these are the three commonly available rounds that you can get for it. In fact, if you go to Walmart, you're going to find buckshot, birdshot, and slugs. That's what you're going to find. That's what's there. Okay. There are exotic rounds, and I will talk about those lightly and briefly to talk on those later on. But understand that there are exotic rounds and there are improvised rounds that you can make out of various rounds and that you can make for your shotgun. Not really going to get into that a whole lot, but just understand and realize that they are there. Okay, so real quick, let's look at each one of these three main distinctions in an understanding of a home defense scenario. Okay, let's say I'm laying in bed at night and somebody is trying to break in my house. I need to get into action to stop that action. Okay? Alright, so I get up, I grab my shotgun. Alright. Now beforehand, what do I want loaded in my shotgun? Well, let's go through the different forms. First option is birdshot. Birdshot is designed to kill anything that's basically a goose or smaller. It's not really designed for anything of any real size. Therefore, a 200 to 300 pound man, you hit him with birdshot, unless it's at a very close range, it's really not going to do all that much. It's going to make him mad more than anything. Okay? So, is it going to hurt him a lot? Yeah. Is it going to be lethal? No. The other thing is there's a spread with that round. Now, at a short range distance, not so much. It'll be more compacted depending on your choke. We'll talk about choke later. But most likely at a distance of anywhere from 10 yards to 20, it's just going to make them mad. That's about all you're going to do. Okay, so let's talk about buckshot. Buckshot, as commonly found at Walmart, you can very easily find double-aught buck. Now, double-aught buck is roughly, each one of those pellets is slightly smaller than a 9mm or 38. Okay? They are roughly about .33 caliber. Okay, so .33 is basically slightly smaller than 38. 38 caliber is the same as 9mm if you're looking at caliber. Okay, so there you go. So if you shoot somebody with a 9-round double-aught buck shot round, it will be similar to shooting them 9 times with a 9mm. Granted, it's going to be slightly smaller because it's .33 caliber versus .38, but at least it gives you an understanding of the damage being done. Okay, and then you've got the last one, and that's called slug. Alright, so let's look at it from a different point of view. A slug, then, is one solid chunk of lead that weighs about an ounce, depending on the slug manufacturer. It weighs an ounce. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, well, when you're looking at slug, I don't care where I hit my opponent with that slug. Whatever it hits is going to be gone. And that's just for starters. Okay, so in other words, if I hit them in the foot, their leg is going to be gone. Okay, because it will take that out. That whole area is going to be gone. Okay, if I hit them in the shoulder, I can expect this entire arm to be blown off. Okay, OFF, off, gone. See, I'm standing here, my arm is back there, type situation. Okay, likewise, if I shoot them in the head gone, right? Alright. If I shoot them in the torso, I'm going to have an entrance wound about like this. Exit wound of, well, pretty much everything that was their back is going to be splattered. Do we have an understanding of the power of this round? I hope so. Alright, so let's get on to the rest of it. But you have to understand this before you can really start to appreciate all the things that a shotgun is. So, anyway. Okay guys, here's my Mossberg 500. I'm going to unload it right now, just so you have an understanding. Okay? Now on the Mossberg 500, there's a little tab up under the ejection port. Okay? And that allows me to take out my shells from my magazine tube without shucking them. I could just as easily do a 7-round shucking, but I've decided not to do that because, well, it's noisy. So give me a second, because I take all 7 rounds out of my shotgun. And yes, I said 7, because I've modified the magazine tube, if you haven't paid attention up until now. This is/was a Mossberg 500 shotgun. Okay? The problem is that a Mossberg 500 has a magazine tube of 5 rounds. I wanted it to have more. So therefore, I bought a 7-round magazine tube extension with a 20-inch barrel that has rifle sights. This is a cylinder bore barrel. Okay? Now, the reason why this is important is the cylinder bore basically means that this shotgun barrel is the same diameter at the chamber as it is at the end of the barrel. Why is this important? Okay. To understand this, you have to understand how shot works. Okay? For a shot barrel, okay, there is a thing called choke. Choke is just simply, if my barrel is the same width at chamber as it is at the end of the barrel, it's just going to shoot the shot straight out. Okay? It's not going to focus it. It's not going to condense it. It's just going to let the shot spray as it does. Now, over time, after a bunch of turkey hunting and stuff like that, settlers decided, wait a minute, well, that's not working so well for us, because it's not condensing the pattern of our shot. We want a more condensed pattern. So that's when they came up with the idea of modifying their chokes, or condensing the end of that barrel to keep the shot spread to a minimum. Okay? And then when you're talking about modified chokes, full chokes, modified full, all these different forms, that's just simply how much of a restriction or how closely they've closed the end of that barrel to keep the shot from spreading as far out at longer ranges. So basically, effectively increases the range of your shot capacity. Why is this good? Well, obviously it makes your shot more condensed at longer ranges. This is a good thing. For hunting, for home defense, it's absolutely worthless. And here's why I say that. If I need, let's say, we're in a self-defense situation, or we're in a situation where I cannot easily get more rounds, okay? So let's say it's a post-apocalyptic situation, just for giggles, and I need to shoot slugs, okay? I'm not going to want to shoot slugs out of a full choke weapon. Why? Because slugs are designed for cylinder bore. What does that mean? Okay, that means that if I'm shooting it through a full choke bore, I'm forcing this big slug, the size of my thumb, through an opening that's smaller than that. Okay, now let's think about, well, the easiest way I can think of it is childbirth. You've got a watermelon going through an opening the size of an apple. What happens? The apple rips. Okay, now if you do the same thing to that shotgun, what's going to happen? The end of your barrel is going to rip. Yeah, and also, you know what it's also called? Because it's going to be happening very fast and very explosively. You know what also it's going to happen? It can split your barrel. And guess what? That endangers you, the shooter, and everybody around you, because now you've just basically turned your barrel into, more or less, a possible pipe bomb. Thank you very much. Alright. Now, is that a common occurrence with slugs? No, not really. Even through a full choke. I'm just saying it can happen. I'm not saying that it does on a regular basis, because obviously if that was the case, then no one would ever shoot a slug for a reason. But now let's up the ante, okay? If you look on YouTube to certain channels, you will find cut shells. Now what is a cut shell? A cut shell is basically where they took a birdshot round, cut around it through the outer casing of the shell, okay, so that when they loaded it and fired it, the whole top half of this shell is blown out of the barrel, okay? So basically what that turns us into is a slug slash frangible round, okay? So that when it hits, the plastic hits, but now it releases all this shot through the wound, okay? So let's understand how that works in a hunting situation. If I'm shooting this at a deer, the end of the plastic will go into the skin, and at which point it'll open and turn itself inside out, and all that shot will then go through the wound cavity straight through the deer. Hopefully you've hit him in the heart, lung, or head. Okay? So that is how this is worked, or the neck. So that's how this works with cut shells. Now, let's talk about why this can be bad in a full choke shotgun. Okay? A slug will compress a little bit, and it's not as big around in diameter as the entire shell, right? So I've got the entire shell rocketing through this barrel. That just, oh yeah, it happens to be full choke. What's just going to happen? It's going to blow the end off of my barrel, right? Or it has the ability to. See where this is going to go into the next thing, which is, like I was talking before, a pipe bomb incident at the range. That's not a good thing to do. So, that's why I say cylinder bore. Because now, with a cylinder bore, I can do those crazy rounds, most of them, if I choose to. Because as long as it'll fit down the end of my bore, I'm good. Okay? So that's one of the reasons why you want cylinder bore. Also with cylinder bore, I have no worries about running slugs through it. And with these rifle sights, it's actually designed to have slugs run through it relatively reliably. See what I'm getting at? Okay. Since I keep slugs in this gun, I'm going to want to use this. Yes, there are slug barrels. Yes, I have one. Let's talk about slug barrels. Slug barrels are just simply a cylinder bore barrel that is rifled to give the slug better accuracy. In my case, I find that slug barrels are good, but it really doesn't affect the accuracy that much. To me, what affects the accuracy is the shooter, not the barrel, okay? Especially with shotguns, okay? So, why do we want a shotgun for home defense? Most of the time in home defense, you will likely find that you will be in a short range situation, okay? So, if you are going to use a long gun, you're going to want to use a shotgun because you have the ability for maximum damage at any range that would be in home defense range, okay? Much further than 150 yards for a home defense situation, if you foresee the need to shoot that far, you need to go to a rifle. And if you're going to go that far with a rifle, you probably, I mean, a 22 is great for survival and stuff like that, but if you're going for home defense at that long of a range, let's say you're protecting a ranch or what have you, you probably need to be looking at 30-30, 30-06, 308, 300 Winchester mag. There's a bunch of different rifle rounds, so that's great for that. But end result is you're going to want to do that. Okay, that ties into the rifles. We're not getting into the rifles at this point because we're focused on the shotgun. Okay, so that's why you want a shotgun for a home defense tool if you want a home defense short range weapon. Okay, now let's talk about a few other things about the shotgun. The first thing that you're going to want to understand is a 12 gauge, pretty much with anything that you run in except for birdshot, is going to kick like a mule. Okay, it's going to come back at you. There will be field recoil. Okay, it's just the way it is. Alright, so my weapon is clear and safe. Okay, I've just shown you that by cycling it. So when that recoil happens, sometimes if you don't have that locked good in your shoulder, it becomes a pain for you. Especially, and the higher and the different things that you're shooting increase the recoil. For example, birdshot, very little felt recoil. However, you start getting into the rounds of buckshot, double-aught buck, triple-aught buck, now you're starting to get some pretty decent recoil. When you get slugs through this thing, especially if you're using 2 3/4 inch magnums or even 3-inch magnum slugs, it's going to hurt like hell. Okay? You're going to shoot about 5 to 10 of them, and then you're going to be done for the day most of the time at the range, especially if you're just starting out. Okay? That's just the way it is. That is why I have installed on this one a kick-like tactical stock. It's designed to take as much of the recoil out of those rounds impacting my shoulder. There are a few things about it. I'm not going to go into a review on this stock here, but there are a few caveats that you have to deal with it. Okay. On the back end, you'll find that I have 5 rounds here. This allows me to reload quickly. Okay. The other thing that you'll notice about a shotgun is that it's a very hungry animal, and you'll go through these rounds very quickly, especially in a pump or a semi-automatic shotgun. However, even though you will go through these rounds quickly, it's also very slow to reload. Okay, That's why I opted for the 7-inch mag, or for the 7-round magazine tube over the 5. I may not have time to reload those extra 2 rounds, whereas those extra 2 rounds in a 7-inch or in a 7-round magazine tube may save my life over a 5. Okay, 7 is better than 5 any day of the week that you're talking about it. That's why a semi-automatic weapon, in my mind, when we're talking pistols, is much better than a revolver because I have more than 6 rounds, or 5, or 4. Unless you're talk about a LeMat, then you've got 9. But that's a whole nother situation. That's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother day. Anyway, with that being said, let's understand how quickly we can start cycling rounds through this thing. Okay? So I've already shown that this weapon is clear and safe. I'm going to take it off safety I just have, and let's go through a small dry fire run. And I'm going to simulate shooting 8 rounds. Ready? Let's go. That's 8 rounds. Do we understand? Okay? That's how quickly this thing is going to go empty. Okay? Now, let's talk about reloading. Okay. On the other side of this thing, I've got a side saddle. I'm going to take this off fire. Now this weapon is safe. Okay? Safe. Alright. Open my chamber, open my action back up. How do you use a side saddle? The easiest way to use a side saddle is to have your hand on your pistol grip, take one of these rounds, slam it up and over, just take it right on over, make sure the brass is towards the back, drop it right in, close it. That allows the elevator to pick up that round and slam it right in the zone, right in the chamber. She's good to go. Now, to finish, I'm going to take right from the back here, pull it back. Know how I'm doing this. Pulling up, coming under, shucking in. Okay? Now if I was doing this with bare hands, I would be using the method of my combat load, where I would have 2 rounds in my hand, and much where I showed with the action open, slapping one in, I just slap it in from the bottom this way, and then I would shuck the next one in. Okay? Either way. And you just keep on reloading until your shotgun won't hold anymore. Now, I've already gone over the combat loading of this weapon before, so I don't really feel the need to do it again. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of an understanding on how to use a side saddle, how to use that tack light or that kick light tactical stock with the extra rounds in the butt stock. So the reason why I have this is so that feasibly, if I have 8 rounds in my shotgun to begin with, if I run dry, I can just take rounds straight from my holders on the side of my shotgun, and now I have an extra magazine full of rounds plus 3, basically. Plus 3, okay? So, if I'm shooting slugs, which is what I'm shooting at this time, and what I will have in it almost religiously, now I have no fear of anything, man or beast. If it walks, if it breathes, and I shoot it with my shotgun, it will die. I don't care. And that, to me, is the whole point of home defense, and it's the whole point of protecting your family. Because if it's gotten bad enough of a situation where I need to pick up a gun, I'm not just going to wave it at somebody, okay? I'm not just going to put them in my sights and pray that they stop attacking me, okay? Or pray that they are going to stop attacking my wife. No. I'm going to put my weapon on them. I may issue a verbal warning. Most likely I will, depending, unless I've already issued one previously, and then I'm going to take the shot because that's what I do. Okay? So, I hope this helps you take an understanding of the entire view of a shotgun. Okay? There's a lot to it, I get that, and I'm always open for questions on this, but that's why a shotgun to me is the most important weapon we can have, is at least for home defense. There are other rounds that are out there. There are exotic rounds, there are rock salt rounds, there are non-lethal rounds, but those are beyond the scope. But just understand that they are out there, and also understand that the easiest thing to reload in the field, if you are going to reload something by hand, is a shotgun shell. With a shotgun shell, all you need is a primer, some black powder, and something to act as a projectile. There has been tales and stories of old timers that would find a twig or a stick of suitable caliber, of suitable size, would whittle that down and then use that as a slug. So they would actually use a wooden slug. There has also been known stories of them using small pea gravel as well. So, you know, just because all you have is the shot shell, a primer, and the powder, don't think that you're unarmed, and don't think that you cannot use other things that are around you to reload your shotgun. And also there are even ways of modifying things to actually make black powder in the field. I will not go into that, but it is possible and it can be done. So, with all that said and being done, I wish you all luck. I hope this was educational for you, and I hope that you might take a second look at a shotgun where previously you might not have. Also understand, a 12 gauge is not the only size of shotgun. In fact, there's 12 gauge, 20 gauge. There is 16 gauges, although they're not common anymore. There also is 28 gauge, which is not common either. Okay, a little quick discussion on gauge too before we leave. The common gauges of shotgun that you will see around is 10 gauge. 10 gauge is a slightly bigger than 12 gauge. Then you have the 12 gauge, like my Mossberg. Then you have a 16 gauge. Then you have a 20. Then you have a 28 gauge. And then you've got 410. Now 410 isn't actually a true gauge, and here's why I say that. 410 is rather the size of the bore, okay? That's the diameter of the bore, alright? Now, they just call it a gauge because it's a shotgun, but it's really a 410 bore. So some people call it a 410 bore, some people call it a 410 gauge. Either way, I don't explain, I don't make the rules, I just follow them type of situation. But anyway, when you're talking gauge, true gauges, 12, 10, 12, 16, 20, 28, okay? All of these gauges are designed and got the name gauge because they would take a pound of lead and then they would basically melt that down, and whatever size or whatever weight from that lead would tell you how many rounds you could get out of that pound. In other words, with a 10 gauge shotgun, you could get 10 shots out of that pound of lead for your shotgun, okay? For a 12 gauge shotgun, you would get 12 shots out of that pound, okay? For a 16 gauge, you would get 16 shots out of that pound, okay? For 20 gauge, and so on and so forth, okay? So obviously 20 gauge would be 20, 28 would be 28, okay? So, when you're talking a gauge for females, If they do not have the ability to handle a 12 gauge, because the recoil on them is substantial, I would recommend then a 20 gauge. Of your shotguns, the two most common gauges that you'll find pretty much everywhere is 12 and 20. 28's hard to find, 16 can be hard to find, 10 gauge is sometimes just a bear to find, but 12 and 20 you can find, okay? Also 410. If you are a very small person, a 410 gauge would probably be the best option for you. They do even have certain pistols in 410 gauge. Reference Taurus Judge, 410, various other ones. But anyway, I've rambled on long enough. Thanks, guys.
I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your time. Defend your homes wisely.